Hey, Cal fans, can everybody hear me? Check, check. Sound check. All right, we have audio. We're off to a better start than last time. Cool. I guess that we can get started then. Thanks to everybody for coming in. This was a lot of fun last time. I'm excited we get to do this again for the big game. So it looks like our first topic that we're interested in is looking at Bryce Love in the Stanford run game. That's actually what I've got pulled up right here. I've got a couple plays pulled. I've got a little bit of a script I can work for, but obviously we can stop and address questions or look at other plays that you're interested in whenever you want. I've broken down the Stanford-Washington game in a lot of detail, so pretty much everything that I have is based on that. I've got a few plays of Stanford's defense against Oregon State as well. If we want to see Stanford's defense against a worse run offense than Washington, I've got a few plays from there. With those preliminaries out of the way, let's get started and look at Stanford's running game and particularly at what makes Bryce Love so dangerous. When people think of Stanford, they think back to Jim Harbaugh and to Toby Gerhart and to everyone talking about Stanford being a power running team. And I can show you some plays with power or counter plays with lots of pulling linemen and things like that. But actually, Stanford's base run for the last couple years now has actually been a zone play. And this is something that Bryce Love is especially good at running and something that is really hard to stop in general. And so this first play that we've got is, I believe, an inside zone play that Love is going to take for a substantial gain early on in the game. So let's take a look at this in kind of slow motion just to get our bearings. Okay, so here's the play. That is a nice gain on first down with a little bit of help from that offensive lineman there. Bush push redux. Okay, so let's go back and look at exactly what's going on here at the pre-snap. Okay, so what we're seeing when we look here, this is a common way that Stanford is going to run inside zone. They're going to start off right here. They've got their 5 offensive linemen and a fullback in the box, and Washington has 6 defenders in the box. And right off the bat, this is going to be a bit of a problem for Washington because they are only matching Stanford's blockers. So if they're not outnumbering Stanford's blockers, then that means that Stanford has a blocker for every defender, and that's where teams can start to get into trouble. The reason that Washington's going to be just matching Stanford's numbers instead of outnumbering them is because they're playing with both safeties deep, as we see here, but that's going to change in a minute. Okay, so the key mark of inside zone is that we're going to see the entire offensive line zone stepping to the right, and blocking the first defender that show up to simplify things. So here goes the play in slow motion. Watch the offensive line. Everybody's stepping to the right. There they go. Okay, so the next feature that Stanford's going to use, and this is going to end up being important, is they're going to take this fullback and they're going to bring him across the formation to kick out this defensive end. So the entire offensive line is zone blocking to the right, and the fullback is sealing off the backside edge. This is a lot like what we saw with Malik McMorris in my Oregon State breakdown video from last week. Okay, so once again, offensive line zone stepping to the right, fullback kicking out the defensive end. That's the basic scheme. We'll see that set up one more time. Okay, so there we can see that Stanford's got a blocker on everyone. And the way that Washington is trying to outnumber Stanford's blockers, the way that they're trying to get an extra defender at the point of attack, is they're rotating this safety down from depth to be the extra blocker against the run. Okay, so here he is. He's going to be rotating down to try and be the 7th run defender. And we see that he's actually coming straight down into the hole that's being created by the offensive line. So we look here. We see that the offensive line's kicking out this defensive end. As we let the play develop, we see that we've got this right guard on this defensive lineman right here. Stanford's built a really nice wall to the left side of the line. But the safety is the guy who's coming down. Whether Love goes inside or outside of this block right here, that safety is going to be in position to block him. And this is where what Stanford does specifically on this play is going to be so difficult to defend. So this safety is coming down to be the extra man. And what you might have seen as we watched the play the last few times is that Stanford is going to use this wide receiver to block that safety. And that ends up, so Washington's trying to bring this guy down as the 7th defender in the box. Stanford's bringing this guy over as an 8th blocker to take out that safety. Or as a 7th blocker to take out that safety, I'm sorry. So watch this guy come on this safety to get that block. So here is the block of the wide receiver coming across on the safety. And here's Love picking his gap. Because the safety's not there as the 7th defender, Love's able to get a very nice first down gain. So this is something that Stanford's going to do that's going to make their offense very hard to defend. On these zone runs, they're going to find ways to get these wide receivers involved as extra defenders in the box. And this is going to be very hard for any team to defend because we see that this cornerback, he's bailing, he's thinking he's a pass defender first and foremost. But what happens is when this safety gets blocked, it's up to the cornerback to crack replace. So this wide receiver is cracking back on the safety. It's up to the cornerback to fill in and be the extra player against the run. But as a pass-first defender and as a cornerback, that's going to be really hard for him to do. So he ends up getting to the ball. He ends up making the tackle, but it's not until Love's already 7 yards downfield. And then another good feature of Bryce Love that makes him so dangerous is that once you make contact, he's going to fall forward for, in this case, an additional 2 yards, getting him to 2nd and 1. So that's example number 1, a Stanford running zone. Not as much power anymore as you'd think, but that's an example of their zone run play and one of the ways that they're going to scheme it up to make it incredibly difficult to defend. Do we have any questions on that play? Is there anything else about it that we'd like to see or take a look at? If the cornerback had run with the wide receiver on that play. Let's see. So if the cornerback, the cornerback could have certainly squeezed down with that wide receiver. And that would have helped him close off that space a little bit more. Now, if you do that, what you're making yourself vulnerable to is right now the cornerback's staying on the outside and he's peering inside. You would have to be worried if the cornerback starts chasing down inside. You might have to be worried about Stanford sending some kind of motion across the formation or something like that to get a play action pass out into the flat. So you have to be careful about the cornerback coming down too much. But that would be one way that you could potentially address this. Let's see. And so why is Washington in cover 2? Let's see if they actually are, if that safety is just coming down from depth. Yeah, so they're not actually in cover 2. That's just the pre-snap look that gave us 6 blockers on 6 defenders. But what we see is that towards the snap, so it looks like it's cover 2, which gives us our 6-on-6 matchup, which is probably what keeps Stanford from audibling into something else. So they're showing cover 2, but this safety is starting to come down at the snap. This safety is going to the deep middle of the field. So in actuality, this is probably cover 3. And that's also part of why this cornerback isn't going to be chasing down inside on this wide receiver, because if Stanford's running some kind of play action crossing route over to the sidelines, then your cornerback is your deep sideline defender. So the particular coverage, the zone coverage that Washington's running here, is going to make it difficult for this cornerback to both be a deep sideline defender in the event of play action and also to squeeze down on the cracking wide receiver. So that kind of answers a couple questions with one stone. Nice, good stuff. Anything else on this play? Hello to all of our new Cal fans coming in. Maybe some Stanford fans. Are there any Stanford fans in here? None of them will admit it. Okay. Well, if there's nothing else on this play, I've got another play that I can talk about to really show how dangerous Bryce Love is. This comes from a lot later, 8:57 in the fourth quarter, I believe. Yeah, that's right, 8:57 in the fourth. So we'll skip ahead substantially when this was still a pretty close game. Actually, there's an incredible end zone angle on this, but we can start off just watching the play. So this is going to be another zone play by Washington. This is in the red zone. And let's see what's going on here. Okay, great. So this is a play. This is another zone play, and what we're specifically highlighting here is the vision and the kind of evasiveness of Bryce Love. So here's the play in slow motion so that we can all see what's going on. Not a lot there. Whoops. He's able to slip outside and get into the end zone. That's what's going to make him such a dangerous back. Okay, so now that we've seen the play, let's actually skip to the end zone footage, which gives us a much better view of what's going on here. Okay, here we go. So here is the end zone footage on this play. Once again, Stanford is running zone. So we're watching for the entire offensive line to be zone blocking to the right. And this is a tight end who's going to be releasing up to the safety. So once again, Stanford's finding a way to get a blocker on that safety who's going to be filling down as the extra defender against the run. Last time it was a wide receiver. This time it's a tight end. Okay, now let's see what happens. Okay, let's actually stop this right here. So this play's going to the right side of the formation, as we saw. Stanford is going to kick out the defensive end with this fullback. So this fullback is kicking out the end and opening the right edge of the hole. And meanwhile, Stanford's got their guard and their tackle on a combo block on a defensive lineman who's kind of swallowed up behind them. He's hidden. You can't see him right now. Okay, so there is where the hole is developing. The fullback kicks out the defensive end. These two linemen are combo blocking on this defensive lineman whose right leg we can see right here. Now, at this point, Washington actually should be able to defend this. They've got the backside covered up pretty well. They've got good pursuit coming from the backside. This linebacker is going to be able to fill the A gap right here between the right guard and the center. And this linebacker should be able to fill this C gap outside of the right tackle. So Washington looks like they're in pretty good shape here. Okay. But now what we see is that linebacker who was filling that C gap has gotten swallowed up and sealed off to the inside. So he hasn't fit the run very well here. Here's his helmet. We can see that he's swallowed up inside of this right tackle. But still, if you look at this, it doesn't look like there's very much space for Love to get through. But he's able to find that seam and pop outside once that linebacker gets sealed off. Once he gets swallowed up, Love's able to find that tiny, tiny space and to squeak through it for the touchdown. We'll run this forward one more time so that we can all see this. So here we're zone blocking to the right. The tight end releases up to block the safety. The fullback kicks out the defensive end. UW's got a linebacker in the hole who should be able to make the play here and attack the line of scrimmage. Okay, so here he is looking like he's going to be in that C gap. Here's the right tackle getting the first block on him. Right tackle kind of manhandles him, gets him back inside, creating a tiny, tiny seam for Love to pop through. Takes a little jump sideways with defenders pursuing him from every angle. Works his way up. Here's that tight end blocking the safety who would have been able to make this tackle if there weren't a blocker on him. Here's that tight end who released up to block the safety. And that's what springs Love into the end zone. So really nice play design by Stanford using a fullback and a tight end to the strong side to kick out the defensive end and block the safety. Really nice vision by Love to get through a very small hole in Washington's crease, in Washington's defense, once that linebacker gets out of his run fit. All right. So now we've kind of been through that play. Questions there? Anything that people would like to see more of? And just really good vision by Love there. A really nice ability to avoid defenders and get into the end zone. I mean, the big thing is that when we get back to this shot right here, we really need this linebacker filling downhill in this C gap really quickly. The faster he can attack the line of scrimmage, the harder he makes it for this right tackle to get out and block him. So because he's kind of hanging there and hanging, instead of attacking the line of scrimmage and filling into that gap, he gives that right tackle time to come off of his block and get on him. If he would have attacked the line of scrimmage immediately, so if this play starts, if he reads that this is zone and comes flying downhill, then he's able to close off that seam that Love ends up taking. So inside linebacker play, I feel like in this game, Washington's defensive line performed really well, actually. I don't think Stanford's offensive line is as good as they've been in the past, or their defensive line for that matter, with the exception of their nose tackle. But I think that Washington's inside linebackers hurt them a little bit in this game defending the run. So I think you need that linebacker to come downhill fast. You need him. Washington would want him forming a purple and gold wall at the line of scrimmage instead of getting engaged by that tackle a couple yards deep. Other stuff on this play. What are we thinking? Do we want to see more run plays? Do we want to move on to one of the other topics that we can talk about? What are y'all interested in? Does that play well into Cal's linebackers? It played a lot better into them when we still had downs. Our guys are well coached. They can stick their nose in there. They're not afraid to do it. So I guess we'll see. It's not the greatest matchup for us, I don't think. I think it'll be tough. Stanford's definitely going to get their yards in the run game. It's going to be up to us to use a lot of scheme to try and mix up who the offensive line needs to block and where our extra defenders are coming from. I don't know that we're much better in this regard than Washington is, certainly. Are there any examples of Washington? Oh, yeah, I've got example. I knew that we'd want to see how do you stop Love. So let's take a look at some of these plays. Okay. Okay, well, let's take a look at this play from 4:03 in the second quarter and see one way that Washington was able to stop this play. So 4:03 in the second. And scheme-wise, there are things that we can talk about as well, for sure. Okay, I'm scrolling to 4:03. All right, let's look at this zone play right here. Okay. And let me just double check something. Okay. Good. Okay, so let's watch this. So here's a play where Washington defends this play pretty well. It ends up only being a 2-yard gain. So this is kind of interesting. So this isn't a schematic. This isn't Washington defending this play really well by scheme, as we're going to see once the play develops. They're actually getting outnumbered to where the play's going here, but we're going to see really good execution in a way that your linebackers can make an impact and stop these plays from being so effective. So let's watch it once in slow-mo. Okay, that is well stopped. Let's watch that one more time before getting into the discussion. As always, we always want to be thinking about numbers. So Stanford's got 5 offensive linemen, a tight end for 6, wing tight end for 7, fullback for 8 blockers in the box. Washington's got 3 defensive linemen, 4 linebackers, a cornerback out here for 8, and then an extra defensive back coming down to the outside. So they're getting, they have, roughly speaking, 9 defenders in the run fit. Watch this play one more time. It's going to the left. Nice. Okay, there we go. Okay, so how is Washington able to get this stop? This is a zone play, same kind of thing that we've seen before. Stanford's loading up the box with a bunch of extra blockers, 5, 6, 7, 8 blockers. Okay, so in my preview in North Carolina, I don't know if any of you saw that, but in my preview in North Carolina, I talked about combo blocks on zone runs, and The point of that was that to stop these combo blocks from being so effective, it's up to your defensive linemen to hold the double teams that are coming at you and protect your linebackers to free them up to make the play. So let's see how that works out for Washington right here. Here's the play starting, okay? We see that Washington has actually been able to get single coverage. So here's a schematic thing that they've done. They've been able to get single blocks by the center on the nose tackle and by the left guard on the defensive end. And the way that they're doing that is ultimately just with numbers. So the nose tackle is covering up the center. That's going to leave the right guard or the left guard and left tackle to take these two down linemen, with the wing, I believe, releasing for this extra defensive back. So Washington is outnumbering Stanford to the play side 4-3 with 1, 2, 3, 4 defenders going up against 1, 2, 3 blockers. So spinning this safety down is one schematic way that Washington is able to take away this zone run. Now, why are these single blocks so important? Why are these one-on-one blocks so important? Well, here we go. Okay, if these two defensive linemen are able to keep these blockers from getting up to the linebacker level, then that frees up this linebacker to come across the formation and attack to the play side. So here we see Stanford's fullback inserting into the hole, and we see that the strong side linebacker, the first linebacker to the play side, this guy right here, he is able to fit outside of that fullback. So here comes the zone play one more time. We see these linemen working out to their defenders. We see this opening up a hole right in this lane right here. We see the fullback inserting into that hole. The strong side linebacker is able to meet the fullback in the hole and take him on. And now, because none of these linemen have been able to get off of their combo blocks or single blocks to block this linebacker, he is able to come across the formation. He's coming across the formation from the opposite side and fitting inside of the fullback, which is the only lane that Love has available to him. And he actually gets an assisted tackle on this play. So one more time. We're going to get a lane in between the left tackle and the left guard. The fullback is going to be inserting into that gap as a lead blocker. But because Stanford isn't able to get their offensive linemen up to these linebackers, that's going to free up the linebackers to fit on both sides of the fullback and shut down the play. Let's slow it down even one more speed to really get a good look at this. Okay, so here's the play. Here's the lane opening up between the left guard and left tackle. Here comes the fullback as an ISO blocker. So here's the fullback. Here comes the first inside linebacker to fit outside of him. Here he is taking on that inside gap, going low, making a pile in the hole. That's really important for the linebackers. Attack the line of scrimmage, make a big pile in the hole so the running back has nowhere to go. And so here comes our weak side linebacker to clean up the play. Okay, and as I said, part of the reason that this is possible, part of the reason that UW's able to keep Stanford's blockers off of these linebackers is because they're spinning down this safety to get extra numbers to the play side. And an important fact is that they're able to do this without sacrificing anything to the backside, because zone's a play that can cut back. But we see that on the backside of this play, Stanford has 1, 2, 3 blockers on the backside, right guard, right tackle, and tight end. And Washington still got 1, 2, 3, 4 defenders to outnumber those guys. So Washington's in really good shape from a schematic and from a numerical standpoint here because of the safety rotation that comes down. So both scheme and execution are really important on stopping Love on this play. Questions about that? Anything we want to see again? Do you think we'd be better off getting more defenders into stopping the run and go lighter on pass coverage? I expect that we will do exactly that. Yeah, Stanford's going to come out certainly in a lot of two-back sets like this, certainly with a lot of tight ends in the game. From our past history, I would highly anticipate that DeRuyter would spin a safety down like Washington's doing on this play to get numbers in the box against the run. I really expect that, especially given the fact that I think that Bynum and Allensworth are both physical enough to at least force tough throws to those big physical wide receivers on the outside. I would recommend, and I believe that DeRuyter is going to trust Bynum and Allensworth to take away those throws on the outside and to get extra defenders in the box like Washington's doing here. I would highly anticipate that. Nice questions. Anything else? What do we want to see? We want to see more run game. I don't have any power because, as I say, Stanford doesn't run that too much anymore. I've got some counter plays if we want to see a different blocking scheme. I've got a lot, actually. Washington ran the ball really well against Stanford's defense. I've got a lot of plays about that. Or if you want to see Costello throwing deep to some of these big physical wide receivers, we could look at that too. It's up to you all. Counter. All right, let's check out a counter play. And so we've been seeing that zone is really effective. But another thing, I really do have a lot of respect for Stanford's play callers, for their offensive coordinators. Obviously, they execute very well, so their position coaches are good too. But part of what's so tough about Stanford is that they really do call and scheme the run game incredibly well. And we can see a good example of this at 11:49 in the third quarter. So let me scroll to that. Okay. So this is a different kind of blocking scheme entirely. Okay, and what are we seeing here? We're seeing, once again, Stanford. They're not in two backs this time, but they have an inline tight end and a wing tight end, which amounts to the same thing as having a tight end and a fullback. So it presents similar kinds of problems. On this play, Washington has 6 defenders in the box against 7 blockers. So they're already kind of in trouble. And based on Stanford's play call, you have to assume that they probably expected Washington to once again be playing with 2 high safeties. So getting back to California Love's question, playing with 2 high safeties isn't working out too well for Washington. Let's see if they've got a safety. Yeah, and here they're playing a true 2-deep coverage. Okay, so here comes the counter play. Let's actually go back and watch it from the start in slow motion without me talking. Okay. It's a first down run on 2nd and 11, mind you. Okay. And I believe that they got a horse collar penalty for that as well. Adding on to it, Washington really killed themselves with penalties in this game at some pretty critical moments. Okay, so counter. What is counter? On counter, in general, is a play where you're going to have 2 pullers. It could be 2 offensive linemen. It could be an offensive lineman and a fullback. They're going to pull across the formation, and the rest of the offensive line is going to block down. So the left side of the offensive line is going to be blocking down, creating the left edge of the hole, and then these 2 linemen are going to pull and kick out the defender on the edge, with the second puller blocking up to a linebacker. So here we see the characteristic look of counter with down blocking by these linemen to create the left edge of the hole, and with 2 offensive linemen pulling from the far side. First guy is going to kick out the defensive end or the outside linebacker. Second guy is wrapping up to the linebacker. That's a classic guard tackle counter look. Okay, and this gets back to something a lot like what we saw in my video for this week, where Stanford ran the ball on 3rd and 6 against a light box from Washington and was able to pick a first down. Here we've got 2nd and 11, which explains why Washington is playing with 2 safeties deep. So lesson number 1, when you're playing Stanford, even though it might be tempting to go too deep and play the pass on 2nd and 11, and Washington's got other reasons for doing this, even though it's tempting to play too deep, you put yourself in danger if you do it because they can hit you with something like this. So let's see why the counterplay works. Stanford, before the snap, has 4 blockers to the right of center. And Washington has 1, 2, 3, 4 defenders to the right of center. So Washington's already probably in trouble. Maybe they can get this nose tackle over to the play side for a 5th defender. But at the snap, they're already going to be in trouble from a numbers standpoint. When Stanford pulls the right guard and the right tackle, that's going to give them a whopping 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 blockers to the right of center. Washington's going to need 7 defenders to that side if they're going to defend this play. And there's just no way that they're going to be able to get that many guys over. So we see here. Oh, this is actually a center and a tackle counterplay. Okay, cool. Okay, so Washington it's gonna be impossible for this guy to get across the formation because he's starting out on the defensive line away from where the play is going, and this linebacker is gonna have trouble getting over because there's gonna be a wall of defenders and blockers in his way, ultimately preventing him. This guy's going to be the unblocked guy. He'd be the guy who'd have to make the play, but that's kind of a tough task, and Love has good quickness to get around him. So this is a really nice play call by Stanford to dial up the counter play on 2nd and 11 when Washington's probably going to be playing with 2 safeties deep. Something else that's interesting about this play. Yeah, linebacker was a little late, right? Something that's worth noting about this play, you know, getting back to the question of should you play with 2 deep safeties against Stanford even on 2nd and 11, the problem with going to a single high coverage here is that what we saw in the video that I produced for this week is that Stanford was more than happy to run slants to these 2 receivers on the outside. And they were doing that on 2nd and long and 3rd and medium all game long. And so Washington's probably not calling their coverage. They're probably not just saying, oh, this is a passing down, I need to play cover 2. They're specifically having those slants in mind here. And so by playing cover 2, what that gets them up here is this guy can sit on the slant by this inside receiver and take that away. But if this guy's going to stay inside on the slant, then Washington needs someone who can defend him if he goes deep and outside. So Washington has to play with this safety. If Washington's going to play with this linebacker inside of this receiver, then they have to play with this safety deep over the top and outside in case he runs something deep like a corner route. So Washington isn't just calling cover 2 because it's conventional wisdom. They're calling cover 2 because they need to take away the slant to this inside receiver. But because they're in cover 2 and because Stanford knows that they're probably going to be in cover 2, they know that they can dial up this little counter play on 2nd and 11 for a huge run that's really kind of backbreaking at this point in the game when Washington was still winning, by the way. So defending the run, this is another play where Washington could have played with a single high safety and defended the counter play better if they would have been able to defend the slants earlier in the game. If they would have been able to defend the slants earlier in the game. Because they were giving up those slants and they kept out giving first downs, they had to play with 2 safeties deep, and that made them vulnerable to these runs, which Stanford calls and executes very, very well. Is Love stepping left at the snap to freeze the linebacker. Yeah, that's another hallmark of counter. Not so much as spread teams run it necessarily, but as pro-style teams run it. You do see him giving a little counter motion out to the left right here. We see his shoulders are turned before coming back. And the specific question was to freeze that linebacker. Absolutely, you nailed it. Watch this linebacker's reaction as Love steps left initially. Okay, so here is Love giving his little counter motion. Here's this linebacker initially taking a little half step to the right. This is because if Love releases out for a pass, which is probably what this guy's thinking, he's going to be our 3rd underneath defender in pass coverage to take away 1, 2, 3 receivers. And so this guy has pass responsibility out here if Love releases. When Love fakes to the left, it freezes him a little bit, and that's definitely part of what prevents him from getting over the top and makes him a little bit late. Really nice observation. Yeah, because if he would have booked it, if he would have read the pulling lineman and come across the formation right away, he might have been able to get to this play. So that's another subtle wrinkle that Stanford's worked into this play to make it so dangerous. Nice. Anything else on this play? Anything else we want to see? What else do I have in the run game? Actually, I've got another. Oh, let's see. Can we see ways to attack the Stanford run defense? My guess is that we might need to lean on Laird a la Vereen in 2009. Yeah, that was basically Washington's game plan in this game. And we see that here, well into the third quarter, they were winning 14-10. Washington ran the ball really well against Stanford, and there are definitely a few coherent things that we can point to. Things that worked for both Washington and for Oregon State, I might add. So you know that Beau Baldwin's seen this. Okay. Let's go to 12:34 in the second. There's smug David Shaw. All right, here we go. Is Pac-12 refs talking too much? Okay, so here, here is a nice play that Washington's able to move the ball on. Here's the play in slow motion. Boom. Huge lane. Really nice play. Okay, let's watch that one more time. Great job. Okay, so this is a power play. Power is a lot like counter in many ways. The play side of the offensive line will be blocking down, creating that wall, that left edge of the hole. But the difference between power and counter is that power is just going to pull one lineman over to the play. So power is generally run to the is often run to the strong side. There's only one puller, adding an extra number. Whereas counter would be pulling two blockers across the formation. And so the ultimate problem here is, as always, let's count our numbers in the box. We've got 5 offensive linemen. A tight end makes 6. A fullback makes 7. So how's Stanford doing? Well, they've got 8 in the box. 8 in the box theoretically. Okay, so Stanford should be able to outnumber Washington's blockers here, 8 on 7. But this is where your offensive coordinator makes his money, because what Washington has seen is that Stanford likes to rotate down. In this case, they're rotating down their strong safety to the weak side of the formation. They're bringing this safety down to this side of the formation. And he's their 8th defender, but as we can see here, he's just not going to be able to get across the formation to make a play on this. So here's that safety. The play is going to the right. Okay, the safety is the unblocked 8th defender. Washington doesn't have a guy who can get him, but I mean, at this point, is that Gaskin or Coleman? Gaskin's just coming downhill with a lot of speed, and that safety's not going to be able to do much about it. So once we know that this safety can't get involved in the play, we can do our numbers count. Washington's got 4 blockers. They're bringing the tackle over for a 5th blocker. So Stanford's going to need to be able to get 6 defenders to the right of center. At this point, they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5. There's no way that they're going to be able to get this safety over as a 6th man. So Washington's done a really good job of seeing this kind of safety rotation where this guy's coming down to the weak side. And so they're just going to attack strong all day. It's just a basic numbers game. Okay, left edge of the hole. Left edge of the hole. Kick out block by this fullback or wing tight end, whatever he is. Okay. These two guys are flowing really fast to the play side, really fast to the strong side, so they're actually going to run themselves right out of the lane. And Washington's basically got a tunnel down the hash for a major gain, as this safety comes over and tries to hold on for dear life. That additional defender gets run over a little bit. Did Stanford adjust to slow down the UW run game in the second half? I would say not really, actually. Washington got into some trouble Stanford kept doing basically the same thing. The first drive of the second half, they came out with a little bit different look, and they did get a stop, but they didn't really stick with it. I guess that they were worried about other things. Washington shot themselves in the foot with penalties here and there. They shot themselves in the foot by trying to make Browning throw the ball, which wasn't a good idea. But Washington was able to run the ball really until pretty late in the game. A couple of times they got behind the chains, but they ran the ball well all game long. And if you look at Washington's rushing offense compared to other rushing offenses against Stanford's defense, Washington was really efficient. They did a good job. So there's not a lot. Stanford held Washington to 1.4 yards per carry in the second half. Well, maybe so, but this play was in the second half. Something else that I would point out about that, because I was wondering the same thing, is that there's this drive where Stanford gets into trouble, or where Washington gets into trouble because they get behind the chains. And if you look at the running back on those plays, all of the runs are by Coleman. None of them are by Gaskin. So on the drive right before this one, Gaskin had a nice gain, but then fumbled, I believe. And so Gaskin was out. I don't know if he was hurt or if they were punishing him, which seems like it'd be a stupid thing to do. But there was one long drive, where Washington got behind the chains a little bit, and they did have a different running back in the game. So that's a good lesson for us to keep in mind in terms of Laird versus our other running backs. We're going to need Laird's vision definitely to get through, because if we've got a back with less of that vision, then a lot of our plays, especially a lot of our zone plays, aren't going to work as well. But I mean, Stanford did pretty much the same thing in the second half that they were doing throughout the rest of the game. Let's see. Do I have anything about the second half? My left, big gain. Who's here? Stanford did get some stops, and their nose tackle was really, really good. So we could actually look at a play where he really makes a difference. Let's look at 10:29 in the second. For the most part, I mean, I don't feel like Stanford's defensive line made a huge difference in this game. I think Washington's defensive line was more disruptive than Stanford's. But there were a couple plays where their nose tackle, who's got something absurd like 75 tackles, where he really showed kind of what makes him so good. And so we can look at a play like that. Scroll through this punt return. But for the most part, Washington was able to run away from that nose tackle. Here we go. All right, so let's see what's going on here. So here's the nose right here, lined up over the center. Here Washington is running, what play is this? Here Washington's running a counter play of their own. There's that nose tackle just getting through the line and running down the play. So remember that on counter, both of these offensive linemen are going to be pulling to the left side. And this nose tackle is going to be getting a down block coming from the play side, so this guard's going to be blocking down on him. The center can't block the nose here because the center has to be coming over for this guy. When both of these linemen pull, the center has to come down to get this defensive lineman. That's going to leave the left guard on the nose tackle, who's a really fast, strong player. So here is the left guard trying to block the nose tackle. And he doesn't do a very good job. Really nice play by that nose. That shows you what makes him so dangerous. That guy's a good player. And later in the, let's see, how should we account for their nose, especially if he was so strong? Washington was able to run away from him a lot. And actually, let me show you what they did to run away from him. So something else that Baldwin likes to do, and that we're definitely going to do, is use unbalanced formations. Do D linemen typically line up that far off the ball? They certainly can. It depends on what the call is and what they're doing. But I don't think that that's too strange. I mean, the nose tackle is a little bit farther back. than say the left defensive end, but you'll see that definitely. Let's see. So let's look at. Okay, great. Let's look at a play from the third quarter. Here's another play. I mean, I've said that Washington ran the ball consistently throughout the game. Here's a play from 8:46 in the third quarter where they were able to get really good numbers just through formation and scheme, and they were also able to take that nose tackle out of the game. So this is where Beau Baldwin's going to show us what he can do. We're going to 8:46. And when you see plays like this, Washington was able to do this play that we're going to see all game long. There's a nice gain on first down. And we're going to see another nice gain to Gaskin on second down. Okay, here we go. So what's Washington doing here to account for the nose tackle? Well, they're going unbalanced. So just to define an unbalanced formation, normally... remember that every offensive formation has to have 7 players on the line of scrimmage. So in a normal balanced formation, you'll have the center on the line of scrimmage, and then there will be 3 men on the line to his right and 3 men on the line to his left. That's what makes it balanced. But what we see here is that Washington is unbalanced. They've got their center right here. He has 2 guys on the line to his right, and he has 1, 2, depending on who's on the line, 3, 4. He's got four guys on the line to his left. 1, 2, 3, and 4 maybe, or 1, 2, 3, and 4, depending on which of these receivers is on the line or off it. So Washington is in an unbalanced formation here with 2 guys to the right of center and 4 guys on the line to the left. And the way that Stanford is accounting for this is they're bumping their defensive line over to the strong side of this formation. So normally in a 3-4 defense, the nose tackle would line up over the center, and the ends would line up over the tackles. But because Stanford recognizes that Washington is unbalanced, they've bumped their defensive line over to the extra men. So now instead of being over the offensive tackle, the defensive end is over the right guard. Instead of the nose tackle being over the center, the nose tackle is over the left guard. And then this defensive end is over the left tackle because Stanford likes to pinch in their strong side defensive end sometimes. So that's going to put that really talented nose tackle on this side of center, and that's going to make a difference because of the play call that Washington's using. So they've forced Stanford to bump their line over to the strong side. So what are they doing? Well, you might have guessed it. They are running to the right. Okay, so they get Stanford to bump their defensive line over to cover the unbalanced formation, and Washington comes back and runs to the weak side to those 2 blockers to get a really nice gain. Really nice gain here. Okay, so how's this working? Once again, it's always just numbers. So Washington is pulling two of their linemen. It looks like an outside zone pin and pull play. Yeah, with the center and the tackle pulling. So basically the center and the left tackle are going to pull and become 2 extra blockers on the right side of the formation. And so that's going to give Washington 1, 2, 3, 4 blockers to the right of, or 3 blockers outside of this right guard. And so Stanford's going to need to get 4 defenders over there to outnumber them, and they're going to have a tough time. The right guard is going to come down on this defensive end. And then that's going to leave basically these 2 guys left to take on the 2 pullers, and that's not going to be enough. And the way that this accounts for this nose tackle, we can see right here when they run the pin and pull scheme. Okay, I mean, this nose tackle, he's caught up in all the trash here. He's not going to be able to get over to where these linemen are pulling. He's got his own guy in the way. He gets slammed into by the right guard. Stanford's stuck with all these defenders on the left side of the formation because they've bumped over to cover the unbalanced look. And Stanford just can't get numbers at the point of attack. This worked for Washington at least 4 or 5 times. Unbalanced is something that we've shown a tendency to do. It's something that we like to do. And so I would expect us to try and replicate this kind of thing against Stanford's run defense during the big game. Anything else that you'd like to see on that play? And really, it looked to me like Washington had that play basically all game long. Stanford kept bumping over. They never really adjusted to it. And Washington, as we saw there, could get some really nice yards on this play, while keeping the ball away from Stanford's best leading tackler. Unbalanced coverages certainly can confuse pass coverage, yes. And part of the difficulty is making sure that you've got that you've got enough guys to cover all of the eligible receivers, and that you're not covering ineligible receivers. So just as an example, if depending, I mean, the tricky thing about unbalanced formations is that it's hard to tell who's on the line, and the refs aren't really strict about enforcing this. I could not tell you which of these three guys is supposed to be on the line of scrimmage and which guy is supposed to be off the line of scrimmage. But something that you could do is if, say, this guy is on the line of scrimmage and this guy is off it, then this guy would be an eligible receiver. And so Stanford would run the risk, if they didn't cover this guy, of him taking off down the middle of the formation for a huge gain. That can definitely happen. It's happened to us. More so with our last coaching staff than with the current one, but absolutely unbalanced formations can cause problems in the passing game as well. And if Baldwin uses unbalanced formations to run the ball like Washington does here, you would expect there to be a pass built off of that somewhere in the game plan. For sure. But it wasn't all, let's see, we've seen power, we've seen a counterplay here. What else? Yeah, I mean, I've got more counter that I could look at for Washington. There are more run plays that we could see. What do you think? Do you want to see more Stanford run game, more our run game? Do we want to look at? We could look at Oregon State against Stanford because they were able to run the ball pretty well in spurts as well. They didn't go unbalanced, I don't think, but they were still able to have some success. Oh, I also have one from the Oregon State game. I've got one empty formation against Stanford's pass coverage, which is something that might be relevant to the big game, given how often Beau Baldwin likes to go empty. What'd the Beavers do? Okay, let me switch over. All right, so where's the play that we're looking for here? Okay, we are looking for... Okay, let's look at this play from 10:42 in the second. We're going to see a lot of commonalities with what Washington was doing. And this first play that I've got actually opens up a really similar inside lane, a lot like what we saw from Washington just a play or two ago. So here's the play in slow motion. This is not an unbalanced formation. Okay. There's that nice lane right up the middle that we saw Washington exploiting a couple plays ago. And Null's bigger. He's able to make that free safety miss and get a lot more yards out of it. The wrecking Null. Okay, so what's Oregon State doing here? So this is just a standard formation showing that you can still... oh, hold on just a second. Okay. Let's see. So this is showing that you can still run the ball from standard formations. You don't have to go unbalanced to beat this defense. What we're going to see here is a tight end and a fullback. So think Malik McMorris and one of our tight ends. This is the kind of formation that Baldwin likes to use a lot as well. And so this is just a power play. This is straight up power. Oregon State's getting a little bit of motion, which they like to do, although it changes things a little bit schematically, so we can talk about that. Okay, but what is it that's going on here? What's opening up this big inside lane? Okay, so just to get our box count, we've got 5 offensive linemen, a tight end, and a fullback for 7 blockers. Stanford's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 defenders in the box, so they should be able to outnumber Oregon State. But Oregon State is going to pull their right guard, so to the left of center, they're going to end up with 5 blockers to the left of center, so Stanford's going to need 6 blockers to outnumber them. They can get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They've potentially got the numbers that they need to the play side to make this work, but the actual angles that they're at are going to be difficult. Now remember that I said that Stanford had 8 defenders in the box. As this receiver goes in motion, the cornerback bumps out, so momentarily Stanford only has 7 defenders in the box, but they are spinning a safety down to replace that cornerback and be the 8th defender in the box. So they're maintaining numbers, but the fact that the safety is rotating down is going to make it harder for him. It's going to make it harder for him to be involved in the play than it would have been for the cornerback to be involved in the play. So Oregon State's doing a good job of using motion to get rid of this 8th box defender momentarily so that they can run the play. Okay. Good. And so what Stanford is going to be trying to do, we saw Washington defend a play. We saw that when Stanford used a fullback as a lead blocker, Washington's defensive linemen were able to hold Stanford's offensive linemen at the line of scrimmage and prevent them from getting up to the linebackers. On this play, Stanford is not going to be able to do that. They're releasing this tight end up to block this weak side linebacker, and he's got a great angle to do that. So they're releasing the tight end up to block the weak side linebacker and prevent him from getting across the formation. Okay, so they're releasing this tight end to block the weak side linebacker and prevent him from getting across the formation. And what this is going to do is when the right guard pulls, here comes the pulling right guard. Stanford's going to need to fit someone outside of him and someone inside of him if they're going to close up both of the gaps that he creates. So here comes the pulling guard. This linebacker is going to attack the line of scrimmage. He's going to try to make a pile in the hole. He's going to attack outside of this pulling guard. Okay, he does a good job there. But now the problem for Stanford is that because this tight end has blocked this weak side inside linebacker, there's going to be no one to fill inside of that pulling guard. And that's what creates this massive tunnel right down the middle of the field, right down the hash, just like on the Washington play, for Null to go through. And here's where we see, if we scroll back to here, if we look at this point, then this cornerback, depending, might be able to make a play on this ball, might be able to jump in and make the play. But when the safety has to spin down like this, here he comes, when that safety has to spin down, he's going to get trapped outside. That safety is getting trapped outside, so he's not able to be an extra defender in this middle lane to take away the running back. So really similar play to what we saw Washington do against Stanford. That's a lane that we're going to want to be able to exploit as well when Stanford's in their 3-4, which they play so much. So we're starting to see some common seams that can open up in this defense and some things that we're going to want to try to exploit. Let's see what else we can see from Oregon State. Okay, what else? Okay, cool. Let's look at a play from 12:57 in the second, so a little bit before this. Unless there are any questions or anything that we want to see more about that last play. Okay, 12:57. No, question. If the corner hadn't reacted to the motion, would Stanford have been able to block better? Well, let's see what would have happened if they wouldn't have reacted to that motion. I mean, the problem if they don't react to that motion is that that receiver is an eligible receiver. So if Stanford doesn't bump a cornerback out, then Oregon State's just going to come back on the next play, run the same motion, and throw to that receiver, and everyone on Stanford's defense is going to be outflanked, and they're going to get probably a touchdown down the sidelines. So the corner, I mean, someone has to react to that motion. I guess you could have made it the safety. Stanford generally is going to bump a cornerback out and have the safety replace him, so that's a schematic thing that they like to do. But you have to react to that motion, otherwise you're going to get killed by it in the passing game. Okay, 12:57 in the second. I got one more run for the Beavers. Here we go. Once again, nothing fancy schematically here. This is just a zone run. But we saw that Stanford was really dangerous when they ran zone, and Oregon State's going to be really dangerous when they run zone as well. It's a tough play to defend. Or maybe not really dangerous, but dangerous enough. Here's Malik McMorris coming across. You can picture that. Okay, not a great play like the last one, but a 5 or 6 yard gain on first down. If we can do that all game, we're going to be in great shape. So this is just a zone run. What Oregon State's doing here that's interesting is they've got a fullback or a wing tight end to the left side of the formation, to the side that the play's going to, and then they've got a tight end on the backside. So immediately before the snap, we see 1, 2, 3 backside blockers. They're also bringing this fullback across as a 4th backside blocker. So just running the math, if Oregon State's got 4 blockers, Stanford's going to need 5 defenders to fill all the gaps. And so who are they going to be able to get? Well, they can get 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe, probably not. If they're going to get 5 to the backside, it would have to be these 3 defenders plus these 2 linebackers. That's going to be a tough task. Okay, so Oregon State's just identified a formation that they can get some good push out of, that they can get some nice scheme out of. The offensive line all zone steps to the left. They've got numbers to seal off everybody to the left side. Fullback comes across, kicks out that outside linebacker. There goes that running back for a nice 5-yard gain. Nothing pretty, but if we can run like that all game, we're going to be in great shape, and we can hopefully keep Bryce Love off the field. So, I mean, I think that there is hope. You know, we're getting up to 8. We're getting to the end of it. You know, there's schematic stuff that we can do. We don't need our offensive line to whip their defensive line, as we've seen from Oregon State and Washington. We don't need our offensive line to dominate their defensive line to run on them. We just need our offensive coordinator to be able to get these numbers matchups and to be able to use formations so that they are going to have trouble getting enough defenders to the point of attack to shut down our play. So this is really going to be on Baldwin. And really, it's always on play calling. There's stuff there. There are things that we can do. There are things that other teams have done, and it's going to be up to us to scheme it up and take advantage. But I think we can do it. We'll see. Thank you. Yeah, thanks everybody for tuning in. It's always fun. And yeah, have fun at the big game and go Bears. See y'all later. Unless there's anything else you want to see. I've still got some time. Bear emoji. Nice. Is there anything else people want to see? Costello's deep throw. Okay, let's do it. Let's go into overtime. Yeah, I was wondering if we'd get to these. Okay. What am I talking about? In the Washington game, in my video about all the slants, I mentioned problems that Washington had with physicality and size at the wide receiver position, and I said that I hoped that Bynum and Allensworth would be able to battle it out a little bit better to limit Stanford's offense. So let's take a look at some of these throws. Let's see here. Washington is Stanford. Continue. Let's take a look at some of these deep throws. Okay, okay, so let's look first of all at one of the places that Washington got in trouble with 33 seconds to go in the first. We can speed this up to full speed. Okay, so here's the play. We don't need to watch it in slow-mo because it's a pass and it takes a while. The thing to notice here is that Stanford's got a big, tall receiver. This is Arcega-Whiteside, and he's matched up on a cornerback who is listed at 5'8". Arcega-Whiteside's listed at 6'2". So if those are true measurables, which I believe for Arcega-Whiteside, I'm not sure about this cornerback, then that is a 6-inch disparity. They're trying to press with this guy, and it's not going to go well. Okay. Now, what I want to note here, I mean, the cornerback's not doing an awful job. He's in decent position here, but you can just see that if he had an extra 4 inches or an extra 5 inches, that he might have been able to make a play on this ball. But ultimately, this is a nice throw. It's a good job of Costello putting the ball where his guy can go up and get it. This is something that I would hope Bynum and Allensworth wouldn't be vulnerable to. Costello does a good job with throws like this. I mean, obviously, that's a well-placed ball. Frankly, I think that he's more dangerous on that kind of a throw than Bowers is. So we can't take it lightly. We can't take it for granted. But I hope that our cornerbacks will be better positioned to take that kind of throw away. We can watch it one more time. What I'm more worried about is this next play, which is going to look a lot like some big completions that we've given up against Ole Miss in particular. And also, I think, against Colorado. So let me look at least one more. Okay, we're going to go to 5:23 in the second. Okay, here we go. This is the play that concerns me more. This is what I can see happening to us. Trace it back in slow motion. Arcega-Whiteside had a big game. Okay, so here is the play. Let's just watch it one time and see if this looks like anything we've seen this season. That is what I'm worried about. I'm worried about plays like that. So schematically, what's going on here? Stanford's actually going spread. They're basically 4 wide. This guy might technically be a tight end, but he's split out. So they've got 3 wide receivers to the left, 1 wide receiver to the right, running back, 5 offensive linemen, no extra blockers in the box. Trips is tough to defend because you have to figure out how you're going. You basically have to decide what coverage structure you're going to use to cover this 3rd wide receiver deep. So what's Washington doing? Washington is spinning down this safety down low and then bringing this guy deep over the top. They're basically leaving this guy for the free safety or maybe the cornerback to the far side of the field. It looks like they're playing some kind of cover 3. And so if they are playing cover 3, then this safety is going to be deep. These cornerbacks are going to be bailing to play the deep sidelines. Those are your 3 in cover 3. We can see that right here. Bailing, deep center fielder. Okay, but when you're in cover 3, the dangerous spot, the place where you're going to be vulnerable, is going to be to this inside receiver down the seam in between your free safety and your cornerback. That deep coverage is going to be stressed down the seams, as we see right here. Okay, so why does this worry me? This worries me because to defend this play, you need... this defender ultimately to carry this guy a little bit better and to squeeze him inside to the free safety help. This guy gets caught maybe looking into the backfield, maybe looking at other receivers, and he lets Arcega-Whiteside blow right by him. So at this point, the play's basically over. Arcega-Whiteside's open down the seam. The safety can't get over the top. Some of our big plays that we gave up against Ole Miss also came from a safety not being able to get over the top. I don't know if that's schematic or if the safety didn't see it. I'm not sure precisely what that safety is doing. But my hunch is that he's being occupied by this third receiver running deep. So trips is tough. This third receiver is running deep. That's going to hold this safety on the hash and open up this massive seam for the wide receiver. Really problematic play for us. Very similar to what we saw against Ole Miss. Yeah, definitely a speed and a height advantage. And ultimately, I mean, this just comes down to assignment. This guy has, one of these two defenders is definitely responsible for this receiver. They don't really, it looks like this guy just gets beat. He gets beat by a slight outside move by Arcega-Whiteside. Arcega-Whiteside stabbing to the left outside right here, and it looks like he's jumping outside to take away maybe a throw in the flat or something like that. And he just loses his step as Arcega-Whiteside blows by him. Yeah, definitely height. In this case, he does. I mean, it's more the release that I'm really impressed with, not just on this play, but on a lot of them. Stanford's receivers generally can get off the line and get off of their defenders really well. They're big and physical, which definitely contributes to that. And this move right here, it really burned that poor defensive back. So these little assignment issues where our guys have to focus, things like that, especially on the inside, these are the big plays that I worry about deep. So we'll see. We'll see how the Bears can do. We'll see how well coached up they are to defend stuff like this. All right, now we've gotten to all the topics that I was going to look at. Any other questions on that? If not, then we might log out for good. Enjoy the big game. How many people are going to the big game? Well, I'll be there. Oh, question about love. Nice. What is it? You can't make it, Joe? That's too bad. The last time we won, my family was right there in the corner of the end zone where Mike Muhammad got his interception. So, does he now have limited mobility in only certain directions? As I watched the Washington game, Love obviously had a good game. He's obviously still got his vision. I did get the impression that he's slowed up a little bit by the ankle injury. I do get the sense that he's a step or two slower. I think he's a little bit hobbled. I mean, his change of direction still looks good. He's still got a burst for sure. But it's not this. But he does look a little bit limited. That was just the impression that I got watching the tape. Booing Tiger, absolutely. That's legendary. Not as quick on cuts. Yeah, I'd totally agree. We'll see how they've been able to kind of limit him during the week and see how he's doing. Cool. Anything else? Oh, maybe it's time to wrap it up. Everybody have a good game. Those of you who can make it, and those of you who can't. We'll be there, me and my family, and hopefully a bunch of other Cal fans. I'm looking forward to it. Go Bears. Sure thing. Always fun. It's going to be a great live cast if we win. We want the axe. That's right. All right, I'm going to log off. See y'all later. Have a great big game week. Watch the play on YouTube. Starkey's Call. It's awesome. That's what I'm about to do. See y'all later.